Hi, this is Olajide from CTF Security and welcome to our first video in 2025. Today, we'll be working on a hack-the-box machine called Sightless. In this video, we'll focus on enumerating the machine and exploiting a server-side template injection vulnerability to gain a reverse shell and achieve remote code execution. In our follow-up video, we'll showcase how to gain root access and fully compromise the machine. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, before we get started, let's remind ourselves for the objective of this video. First of all, we want to enumerate the machine. Secondly, we want to exploit server-side template injection vulnerability to gain remote code execution on the server. Thirdly, we want to extract the user flag from this machine. Now, to get started, the first thing we want to do is to take our IP address, and I can go to my terminal and I'll make sure I add this to my sc/host file. Now I'm unsure of what domain I should use for this, so we're going to access the IP address and see what we get in return. It's taking a while. It's taking a while. Okay, so since that is taking a while, what we're going to do is, let's go to the first task. So the first task says, how many OpenTCP ports are listening on Sightless? So what we can do in this regard is run an nmap scan. So sudo nmap scan. Then we can specify the IP address. And the name we want to call it. Okay, so this is going to take a few seconds or probably a few minutes to complete the scan. So while we wait, we check the status. So we have our target machine fully loaded, which is sightless.htb. So since it's sightless.htb, what I'm going to do is to grab this and I'm going to include this in my host file, and I'm going to redirect it to, sorry about that, to my IP address here, not mine, to the target IP address, I beg your pardon. Load it in here, and we're going to save. All right, cool. While we're waiting for the scan, this is probably going to take a while. Let's take a look at the next task here. So there's an application running on a subdomain of the main site. What is the name of that software application? So if you go to the actual target site here, which is sightless.htb, we have some menus here, which if you click on any of them, it just redirects you to a certain section of the screen. So let's say I click on services, it's going to take me to the service section. If I click on contact us, it's going to take me to the contact us section here. We also have three links here. We have the SQLPad.sightless.htb, we have the www.proxlaw.org, and we have the sightless.htb, which is redirecting us to the contact me page. So the question says, there's an application running on a subdomain. So the only subdomain link we have here is the SQLPad.sightless.htb. So that happens to be the answer for the task 2. Now let's move to task 3. It says, what version of SQLPad is running on Sightless? So let's go back. here. So since we know that this link is going to take us to the SQLPad, I'm going to click on it. First of all, we need to understand what an SQLPad is. An SQLPad is a web application that lets users connect to various SQL servers via a browser. So I'm just going to click on that. And we get an error which says unknown host. And this is because the Bob suite could not recognize this particular subdomain. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to go to my sc/host file. I have two host files open. I think that's the case here. Okay, so I'm going to just add that to the host file here. I'm going to save. And if we go back and go with the link again, refresh, everything should go fine. SQLPad Sightless. Okay, still reloading. Okay, so this is how let me just make this bigger a bit. So this is how the SQLPad web application looks like, and we can see where we can see our queries. We can also create new ones. We can check history. We can also connect to a particular database, or we can view the list of connected database. We can also check the connection access, including show expired and creating of access. This is where we enter our query, and this section is to run or format the SQL query here. But what we are here to do is to view the version of SQLPad that is running on Sightless. So what we're going to just do is go to here and click on About. And we can see that we have the 6.10.0 as the version of SQLPad on this Sightless web application. So that's the answer for task 3. For task 4, it says, what is the 2022 CVE ID assigned to a template injection vulnerability in this version of SQLPad? Now, since we have the version of SQLPad to be 6.10.0, we can as well make a Google search on the template injection vulnerability, which is related to the SQLPad application. After some couple of search, you come out with a particular CVE called the SQLPad RCE exploit CVE 2022-0944, which makes this ID the answer for task 4. So our answer is CVE 2022-0944. So the next question says, what system user is the SQLPad application running as? Now, for us to go about this, we need to first of all gain access to this machine. Now, when we gain access to this machine using this SQLPad vulnerability, then we're going to check what privilege we have on that machine. That would be the system user that is associated with the SQLPad application. But before we do that, we need to first of all see how the template injection vulnerability works. Now, if you take a look at this payload that was developed for this particular exploit, you see that we have a certain section here which says payload, and from the payload is sending a template injection payload here, which is using a child process to execute the bin bash command, and then it is running the bash interactive shell, connecting back to the attacker's IP address and the port number. So having known this, we can either use this payload by cloning this particular repository and executing it against the target URL and the port, or we can as well do this manually. Now, to do this manually, you need some certain information in mind. First, you need to set the connection name. You need to also set the connection driver. It doesn't have to be the same name. but you need a connection name, a connection driver, and you need a database. So we're going to pass our payload as the database. So that is how the vulnerability, this particular CV 2022-0944 works. So having known all this information, we're going to do this manually. So let's go to our SQLPad, and we're going to try to make a connection. We're going to add a connection. So I'm going to use R007 user. I'm going to select my SQL, just like the payload says here. Then I'm going to select my database, which is going to be my payload. So what I've done is I've modified this payload to fit in my IP address and my port I want to use for connection. So I have it here on my notes. So we have the modified template injection payload here, which is connecting to my IP address and the port number I want to use. So if you're running this on your own, you need to specify your own 20 IP address here, and you need to specify your own personal port number you want to use. If you're unsure of your 20, okay, I think we have our scan completed. So the first question, which says, how many TCP ports are listening on Sightless? This is the result. We have TCP port 21, which is FTP, TCP port 22, which is SSH, and we have TCP port 80, which is HTTP. So we have practically 3 TCP open ports on this machine, which is this answer right here. And we have SSH, which is very interesting. So if we have a credential, we can attempt to SSH in remotely into that particular account on this machine. So we're just going to keep that in mind. So now going back to our exploits, we go back here. Let's go and search for database. I'm going to go ahead and grab my modified payload, everything. And let's go to the application. I'm going to paste it on the database. I will copy this properly. Let's go copy it again. Copy. All right, great. So before we actually test this connection, we need to open up a listener. And to do this, let's use the endcart and listen on port 444, and I'm going to test connection. This is taking a while. Let's make sure. Okay, I think we have a connection, which is root connection. Now, if I say, who am I? And we are root. Now, if you're familiar with Linux system, you see that this particular section we have here is indicating that we're inside a container, probably a Docker container, and we are currently logged in as root, and we have possibly the container ID, and we're currently inside the var/lib/SQLPad because we gain entry into the application through the SQLPad. Now, the question says, let's go to question again. What system user is the SQLPad application running on? So we got our answer, which is root. The next question says, what user beside root has a password set in the container? Now, if we want to list all the users on the system, first we want to do cat/sc/password. And this is going to list all the users. Here we have root. We have node, which has 1,000. We have Michael, which has 1,001 here. So we probably have 2 actual user and then the root user here. But part of the node user and the Michael user, there's a particular user that has the password set. So we need to actually verify that. To verify that, what we need is the cat/sc/shadow, and this is going to give us information about the user's hash. So from there, we can verify the account without the password being set. It's taking a while. Taking a while, taking a while, taking a while. Okay, so since we know these two users, let's reconnect to the machine. Another listener, and let's test connection again. So when we gain access this time around, we're just going to view the /shadow file. Okay, so we gain access, cat/shadow. Okay, so we have two accounts with hash, Michael with hash, then we have root with hash, and we have the node having exclamation mark, which signifies that a password is not set on this account. So eventually we can conclude that Michael is the user that have the password set on the account. So making it that the answer for task 6. For task 7, it says, what is Michael user's password of Sightless? Now, since we're running this on a container, we might not be able to view Michael's password from this container. So let's see if we can actually do that. home/Michael. So we have shadow Michael, new password, new shadow, password Michael. Okay, so that's just the roots of the accounts and stuff like that. Now, for us to be able to gain elevated privilege of this machine, we need to break out of this Docker, but that is going to be done in the next video. But for now, what we need to do is to crack this hash password and try to SSH into each of these two accounts that has their password set and see if we can actually gain access to the host account to actually perform the task of getting the user's flag. But for now, we need to gain one of the password, which happens to be Michael password. So to do that, it's actually very easy. What we need to do is, let's see, let's take this here. So what I can do is Sublime. I can create a file called users hash. And inside this users hash, I'm going to dump the two hash, which is the root and the password on a separate line. And I'm going to save. And we can close this. Now we can attempt to use John to crack this using the raw keyword list and specifying the hash file, which is users_hash. So you can see this has been cracked, and it says loaded two password hashes with two different results. No password hash is left to crack. So what we can do is to view this hash that has been cracked by using the John show user hash. You can see both username and password of the account. So we have the root password to be blind side, and we have the Michael password to be insane clown post. So this is actually the password for the Michael account here. You can see here. Then lastly, we need to submit the user's flag for this machine. Now to gain the user's flag, since we have credentials, we can try to SSH into these two accounts and see if any of these accounts will give us privilege to the host machine instead of this container we have right here. So to actually do that, I can use the SSH root, then the IP, and for the password, we're going to use blind side, and I'm going to paste this. Okay, it says permission denied, so meaning that is not the password for the root account on the host machine. So what I'm going to do is to grab the second one. So we're going to use the SSH Michael, and the IP address of the machine, and I'm going to paste the password. It's taking a while again. I have another tab just to verify which one connect first. So you can actually see that we have connection issues. Just to refresh the home page. That is the reason why we have this taking time as well. Even when you try to ping the IP, see that we have a very slow connection. Very slow connection. Now we are receiving response here. Okay, so we're connected to the Michael account. So all we need to do is ls and cat user.txt, and we have our final flag for this machine. Okay guys, that will be all in this video. We're going to be performing privilege escalation on the next video. So if you learned one or two things from this video, make sure you like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you in the next video.